we often find that what the client thinks people are searching is not at all how they're searching.
If you want to show up in ChatGPT, you should probably go find out who ChatGPT partnered with.
I know Google claimed that AEO and GEO aren't necessary.
Now with generative AI, the internet is flooded with content.
You're listening to ArtForm Intelligence.
Good morning, everyone. I am Laura Facion. I'm a digital strategist at ArtForm. I'm joined by Janet and Hunter, and today we are talking about SEO, AEO, and GEO. We're going to explore how SEO, AEO, and GEO fit together in 2025, where marketers should focus their efforts to maximize visibility across traditional search, AI-driven answers, and generative engines. So Janet and Hunter, if you guys want to introduce yourselves, give your backgrounds, and we'll jump into the conversation.
All right, sure. I'm Janet. I'm the CEO of ArtForm Agency. I started my career in digital by designing websites and doing search engine optimization. So I have seen the evolution of it. I'm really excited to talk about the latest and greatest.
And I'm Hunter. I'm a digital coordinator and SEO specialist at ArtForm. And I kind of stumbled into learning SEO because it was super, super important and I could not learn it. So
let's get started with just what the difference is between SEO, AEO, and GEO. I understand what SEO is. As a digital marketer being in the industry, I understand that from a basic level. But AEO and GEO are terms that are a little bit more new to me. So I was wondering if you could give an overview on what all those three things are.
Sure. I can start with that. So SEO obviously stands for search engine optimization. Been around as long as Google's been around, and we've tried to optimize to be on the first page of Google. The big SEO joke was always, where do you hide dead bodies? On the second page of Google, because nobody looks beyond the first page. But now with ChatGPT and Copilot and all the many plethora of AI tools out there that people are using for search for the first time in decades, Google has gone below the 98% of search, and they're actually somewhere in the 80s. They're still 80 percentile. So they're still, most people are still using Google for search, but we're also now using the other tools. And so what people want to know is how to show up on these AI overviews. And the big change too with SEO is the SERP page, which stands for the search engine results page. So it used to be on Google, you wanted to be that first listing. But now when you have the SERP page, you have the AI overviews, you have your sponsored ads, you have your snippets, like all your information is there. And so being number one might not mean that you're on the first page. And if you still are on the first page, you might have 0 click results. So they're getting all the information right on the SERP page and they don't have to click into your website. So now we enter AEO and GEO, and that is just qualifying for the answers. AEO stands for Answer Engine Optimization, and GEO stands for Generative Engine Optimization. So it's just new, and it's all related to AI. It's showing up for, being the authoritative website that's going to be cited that AI is going to choose from. And it's optimizing in a way that you show up. So it really all goes back to the foundation of SEO. So it really isn't anything different per se. It's just a matter of where you're showing up now. But all the basics of SEO still matter. You still have to be authoritative. You still have to have backlinks that make you authoritative. You still have to have content that's optimized for those terms that you want to show up for. And that goes back to a whole SEO strategy around just intent is still really important, because so often we work with clients who want to show up for what they think are the certain keywords and buzzwords, but they're actually not intent of people buying or purchasing their services or products. So it's understanding what you truly want to optimize for, because ultimately you're trying to grow revenue if you're a business. So what are those things that are going to grow revenue?
So that emphasis on continuing with traditional SEO, is that have anything to do? I know Google claimed that AEO and GEO aren't necessary at one point. Hunter, I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I can kind of answer both. So I think it's important to understand where the terms actually came from and why they popped up, as well as what they actually are. So GEO or generative engine optimization popped up pretty recently in 2023. And that came out of, I think it was Georgia. Let me look at I think it was Georgia Tech. But like a group of students there did a thesis on optimizing content for generative engines and AI stuff. So they basically took the fundamentals of SEO and then did a whole thesis on how to optimize for AI, which is kind of the big question that all the companies have been asking, which there's no clear definitive answer for yet, or ranking system, or how to process. So, that paper's great, and, I'd encourage people to go read it, but that's kind of where the term came from. And it still points out, even in the paper, that your fundamental SEO structure is all encompassing. It's the most important thing, even with all these new terms appearing and showing up. So that's where that one came from. And then AEO, I think, popped up as early as 2010. And that came out because voice search became a thing. So, here's the new fancy tool, voice, you can ask, everyone was calling, or not everyone because it didn't catch on, but that was like the big AI thing in 2010. It was like, we can now search by just speaking to our electronics and it'll pull up an answer. So the question then was, well, why I want my stuff to show up when people are searching for voice. So all of a sudden AEO is a thing. But again, even with AEO, still SEO. Like, SEO is the foundation. It's all encompassing. So even with all these new terms coming up, what you'll find is like SEO and just your basic SEO best practices are still going to be the go-to for how to rank on these new engines or new things that are popping up. They're saying it's not necessary because, again, a lot of the softwares and tools that are being made claiming that like this is how you rank and this is for sure how you show up on the AI platforms, it's just best guess, and a lot of them are still just saying follow your SEO basics. So like if you're optimizing for Google and you're showing up in Google, then chances are, if you use those terms in an AI tool or model, then you'll show up. So it's like, if you rank for number 1 on Google, then chances are you should show up in these AI engines. Same with Bing, like back and forth. And that's why it's important to kind of pay attention to and understand which, like if you want to show up in ChatGPT, then you should probably go find out who ChatGPT partnered with. So like ChatGPT partnered with Bing, I believe. So like the way they're teaching their ChatGPT model, like how to pull what's valuable information, is optimizing for Bing. So like you should be optimizing for Bing if you want to show up in ChatGPT. If you want to show up in Google AI, that's obviously Google's SEO stuff. So it's like still SEO.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are on those upgrades within tools like Moz and SEMrush that claim to get you on the map for AI tools. Have you looked into any of those? Are they legit? Do you find that it's, because some of them are very expensive too. So companies that are looking at those kinds of tools, what are your thoughts on them?
You should make sure you understand how they're pulling the numbers for their metrics, because a lot of it is just kind of they're having these scraper tools just scrape the internet for keywords you're ranking for. They're seeing how many of those keywords come up for AI overviews, and then based off that, they're giving a number. If you're ranking number 1 for a search term you're going for, and that search term also has an AI overview attached to it, then chances are, if that term comes up in an AI model, you will show up. Is that 100%? No. But that's a pretty good guess. Like that tracks to me. And that, if you trust that and you're looking at that, you can take these tools' words for it. But that's, the reason there's so much uncertainty with what I'm saying is because that's all it is. It's a great guess, but there's no like 100%. Here's how, here's why. This is why you're showing up. This is why you're not showing up anymore. This is why you're in an AI overview, but you're not in ChatGPT. This is, there's still a lot of question marks. So I'm ranting, but basically it's like, these tools are great and they're helpful and they offer a lot of insight, but just make sure you understand that there's no definitive how to yet. And they're pulling in and creating these metrics based off of their best guess. And that's the same as all the tools. They're just using different methods to come up with their best guess.
So let's dive in more into like the foundations then of SEO. So what in your opinion, what is the must have for like technical on page SEO? What are the like authority basics in 2025 that people should be looking at when they're approaching SEO?
I think just with like there's a ton of content out there about just SEO and how you should optimize your content, and it's great. So I don't want to go like too far into that, but like I think the two biggest things that I would encourage everyone to focus on if they want to show up in AI or just strengthen their SEO in general is make sure your schema or JSON data on the back end of your pages is set up correctly, because that's what these engines are looking at before anything else. I use the example of like if you were doing a math test and the teacher, picked up your test to grade it and they saw you put all the answers in, but you didn't show your work. That's the annoying thing. Sorry to trigger anyone, but with math tests, you have to show how you got the answer. If the teacher doesn't see that you put in that structure of how you got the answer, he's not even going to look through the test. He's just going to put an F and put it to the side. So that's what these AI models are doing. If they look at the code on your back end and they just at a glance, they can see like, okay, you have stuff there, but they're not going to bother looking into it or scraping it because you didn't put how you got there. So that's why like, it's not quite the same, but like all with the schema and JSON data, just make sure you're actually giving these AI models the context of what's on each page, so that it can actually help you out. Because you could have the greatest content in the world, but if you're not laying that out clearly for these AI models, it's not going to pull you up, and it's not going to, show you to anyone.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point too, Hunter, because now with generative AI, the internet is flooded with content. I can't remember the stat, but there's so much more content out because it's so much easier to write. So everybody is creating content. And so, that goes back to optimizing the content correctly, but as well as answering questions. I guess that's why the AEO, but, it's how people search. There's intent keywords that I was talking about. But, people no longer search by word. People ask questions, and it's super important to understand what questions are people asking and which questions show intent to purchase your product or service, and making sure you're answering those questions and optimizing for those intent keywords.
I don't want to say it's not important, because content depth, like having a lot of content on a page is important, but it's switching now where it's more important to like get to the point very, very quickly. So it's like, here's the question, here's the answer. Here's the question, here's the answer. Like just very, very snappy, very quickly, very helpful. Because that's the content that's getting pulled up. And a lot of times that's what's going to rank. It's like what people find the most helpful.
Well, and that's another tip that we saw when we tested too, is to put a summary at your introductory paragraph before you go into your content and just summarize what it is. Apparently, our testing showed that AI sees those summaries and ranks it higher when we have the summaries at the top. So that would be another tip. Whether that's going to continue, I don't know, but that's just what we're seeing right now, is to put the summaries at the top.
Interesting. Yeah, you mentioned that this changes fast. How often are you seeing these things change, or how often are you seeing these things kind of evolve or update? How often are you having to reassess client strategies that we're delivering? And
often. So the great thing with SEO, and this is what, I laughed when Hunter, expressed an interest in SEO. I was like, oh, you have job security forever, because SEO changes daily. And now with AI, it's changing even faster. So it's really important as part of an SEO specialist job. It is staying up to date on everything that's coming out. I've been doing SEO for over 15 years, and I still start every morning. There's certain people I follow that I look at. It's a daily thing for me, but I love it. I'm passionate about it. So, but there is just new stuff coming out every day.
When we're approaching a client who doesn't have any SEO strategy, what often is your first approach?
That is such a great question because I think, what I have found is asking the client for their seed keywords. And a seed keyword is, what do you think clients are searching to find your product or service? And it's always fascinating to me because, you've got the CEOs all the way down to salespeople who are convinced this is how people search for a product or service. But then when we get the seed keywords, long, short, we get them, then we run them through the keyword checker to see what is the volume of search around these keywords. And we often find that what the client thinks people are searching is not at all how they're searching. So you want to start there with the education of, okay, these are your seed keywords, but here's the keywords that we recommend. And here's why, we give them the search volume as well as the competition around that keyword. And so here's the ones that we are low hanging fruit. We can go, let's optimize for these right away. The competition is low. They're intent keywords. But yeah, I guess that answers the question. Is starting there. That keyword research is still most important because you want to be ranking for the right thing. And we have laughed over the years. We have a client that's been with us for 6 years, and their CEO is always wanting to rank for the most obscure things that he is convinced is how people are searching for their products and services. And then we have to give them the research and be like, no, there's a zero search volume for that term. However, let's do this term. We're going to capture the right audience, but it is. And going in, I see people who optimize for search terms because they're convinced that's how people are searching, and they miss that step of doing the research. And, you don't want to optimize for something that people aren't searching for. I think for me as a CEO, that asking that question, the sales team, myself, and I talk to people is, hey, how did you hear about us? And we've been so encouraged. We had a firm in New York reach out to us for our AI workshops, and I asked how they heard about us, and they said when they asked ChatGPT for the best AI workshops, that ArtForm came up. And I was like, woo, what a win for us, because that is definitely something that we have tried to optimize for, and the fact that ChatGPT is citing us was great. And I would not have known that if I hadn't asked the question. So it's remembering to ask those questions now until they come up with another way to pull the data. But to Hunter's point, I think the domain authority, that's one of Moz's scores, and your visibility score instead of clicks is just going to have to be the measurement.
There is no how-to, there is no secret, there is no definite way to show up. So the stuff that we do know how to and is definite and there's data behind is your SEO foundations, your SEO basics. So stay up to date on your SEO, know how to do it and implement, have a good SEO strategy because it's really, really important.
Right. And don't forget your schema markup. That is that one thing that I've seen. It has always been an SEO basic, but definitely seems to be more important right now.
Well, great. I feel like I learned a lot. So thank you guys for talking about this with me. For anyone watching, if you're interested in learning more, we do have a newsletter that Janet mentioned that goes out every 2 weeks. We include a lot of resources about SEO. We write SEO blogs. We have checklists and resources that you can download. So sign up for that. There will be a link below. Also, reach out to us if you're interested in talking to us about SEO. We do SEO audits. So we can meet with your team and do a comprehensive overview of your site, your rankings, your keywords, how you're appearing in search, how you're appearing in AI overviews. So if you're interested in that, just reach out to us. Let us know. The contact information is below. But thank you for joining us.